Have you ever had one of those days where something small happens and it completely changes everything you thought you knew? I'm talking about those moments that hit you out of nowhere, like a punch to the gut, and suddenly, nothing feels the same. You ever wonder if one decision could shift the course of your life forever? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. I walked into an old cafe one chilly afternoon, expecting nothing more than a hot cup of coffee and maybe a little quiet. But what I didn't know was that the next few minutes would unravel something so big, so unexpected, that I'd be left questioning everything I thought I knew about fate, about people, about life itself. Now, before we dive into this wild story, I want to ask you, where are you watching this from? Type your city or country in the comments. I love seeing where you guys are tuning in from. And while you're at it, if you're enjoying this kind of storytelling, type 1 in the comments, let me know you're hooked. But hey, if this isn't your thing, type 0, because I want to make sure I'm delivering stories that you want to hear. Oh, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Trust me, you won't want to miss the incredible stories we have coming up here on Mr. Alex Stories. Stories that will make you rethink everything, just like the one I'm about to share. So there I was, in that cafe. The place was your typical busy afternoon spot. People rushing in and out, the smell of fresh pastries in the air, the buzz of quiet conversations around me. Nothing out of the ordinary, except for her. She was sitting by the window, her gaze lost in a book or maybe the world outside. At first, I didn't think much of her. She looked like anyone else just trying to get through the day. But something about her felt different. She wasn't like the usual crowd. I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe it was the way she carried herself or the way she seemed just a little out of place. She wasn't dressed like anyone I'd usually see at a cafe like this. No, she had this air of something more important, but she wasn't flaunting it. She had this vulnerability about her that no one could see, and something about it called to me. I sat there, minding my business, thinking about how I was just trying to get through another day on the streets when I noticed her again. Her gaze met mine for a second, just long enough for me to feel a weird connection. It was the kind of glance that made you wonder if someone could see right through you, past all the walls you've built around yourself. It was strange. But you know what they say? You can never really know what someone's going through, right? Especially when they look like they have it all together. But I had no idea just how wrong I was. I didn't know it then, but this was just the beginning. I had no idea how much this moment would change everything for both of us. So, stick around. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this story unfolds. Hit that subscribe button if you're ready to dive deeper into this crazy ride. At first, it felt like just another day. We exchanged polite smiles, nothing more. But then, something unexpected happened. She knocked over her coffee. The mug teetered on the edge of the table, spilling its contents in an instant. I jumped to my feet before anyone else noticed, grabbing a napkin and rushing over. She looked up, surprised, but instead of the usual embarrassment, there was a soft, almost relieved smile on her face. "Oh my God, I'm so clumsy," she laughed, her voice warm but slightly strained. I could see the tension in her eyes, like she was trying to keep it all together, but something inside was clearly breaking. "It's all right," I said, my voice steady as I quickly wiped up the mess. "Happens to the best of us." She gave me a grateful nod, then, to my surprise, laughed softly. "You don't know how much I needed that. Most people would have just ignored it, you know?" Something about her tone struck me. It was almost like she wasn't used to people actually caring. I could tell she didn't belong here, at least not in the same way most people did. She was different. There was an air of sophistication about her, but not in the way that made her seem unapproachable. No, it was more like she was trying so hard to hide something. I couldn't put my finger on it, but the more I looked at her, the more I felt like I needed to help her. "You're welcome," I said, keeping it light. She smiled again, and for the first time I noticed how pretty she was. But not in the obvious way. There was a subtle elegance to her, like she wasn't trying to draw attention, but you couldn't help but notice. It felt wrong to think about her like that, though. She was just a stranger, so I pushed those thoughts aside. We settled into a comfortable silence after that, both of us sipping our drinks. She didn't seem in any rush to leave, and I wasn't in any hurry either. The sounds of the cafe continued in the background, cups clinking, soft chatter, but there was something about the moment that felt different now. She seemed lighter, more at ease. After a while, she looked over at me, as if noticing for the first time that I wasn't just some random passerby. "So, what's your story?" she asked casually, as though we were old friends catching up. Her voice was soft, but there was an edge of curiosity there. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. I wasn't used to people asking about me. Most of the time, I kept to myself. But something about her made me feel like it was okay to open up. Maybe she wouldn't judge me like everyone else. "Nothing much," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm just, trying to get by." I paused for a moment, then added, "I live in the city. Been on my own for a while now." She nodded, her expression softening. "I get that. Sometimes life doesn't go the way we expect, does it?" She said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world, but her eyes had that faraway look again, like she was speaking from experience. I didn't push her for more details. We were both strangers here after all, but the more she spoke, the more I felt like I was seeing a side of her that no one else could see. The walls she'd built around herself were crumbling, bit by bit, as if she were letting me in. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't want to leave. We kept talking, and in that short time, I found myself sharing things I hadn't told anyone in years. Not just about my life, but about how it felt. Being invisible, slipping through the cracks, trying to survive in a world that seemed to forget people like me. And she listened, not just with her ears, but with her heart. She didn't interrupt, didn't try to offer me solutions. She just listened. It was the first time in a long while that someone actually cared enough to hear me out. By the time we were done with our coffee, I realized something. We weren't just two random strangers anymore. Somehow, in the span of a few minutes, we had connected. She had become someone I could talk to without feeling judged. And me? I'd become someone she trusted, if only for a moment. But it was more than just a shared conversation. There was a warmth that had blossomed between us, something gentle, something real. It wasn't love, not yet, but there was an unspoken understanding, a connection that was growing stronger with each word, each glance. I was still trying to make sense of it all when she stood up to leave. She smiled at me as if nothing had changed, but I knew deep down that we had both been changed, even if just a little. "It was nice talking to you," she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "Maybe I'll see you again sometime." "Yeah," I replied, trying to keep it light. "Maybe." But as I watched her walk out of the cafe, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just experienced something I couldn't explain, something more than just a chance encounter, something that would haunt me for days to come. She said something that caught me off guard. Maybe it was nothing, but it lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling. We had said our goodbyes, and she left with a soft smile, but something about her eyes, something I couldn't quite place, stuck with me. Maybe it was the way she looked at me as she walked out the door. The look wasn't like the casual glance of a stranger. It was almost as if she was leaving something unsaid. But what? I tried to brush it off. I mean, why would someone like her, so polished, so composed, be giving me a second thought? I was just some kid who happened to be in the right place at the right time. She was a CEO, for God's sake, and I was just trying to make it through the day without screwing up. But then over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about her. It was stupid, really. There were 100 other things I should have been focused on, like getting a roof over my head or finding my next meal. But every time I closed my eyes, her face popped up in my mind. And every time I thought about her, I couldn't help but wonder, what did she see in me? Why did she take a moment to listen? The next time I saw her, it was at the same cafe. She walked in just like before, eyes scanning the room, searching for a place to sit. I was already there, sitting in my usual spot, pretending to mind my business. But as soon as she walked in, I felt that strange pull again. My heart raced a little, a stupid reaction to someone who barely knew my name. She caught my eye as soon as she entered. For a second, I thought I'd imagined it, but no, she was looking right at me. Not just a quick glance, but a long one. Those eyes studying me, like she was trying to figure something out. It wasn't a cold stare, though. There was something softer in it. Something personal. I couldn't stop the strange feeling that twisted in my chest. She didn't come over right away. Instead, she ordered her drink and found a seat by the window again, just like before. I tried to pretend I hadn't noticed her, but I knew she was still aware of me. As I sipped my coffee, trying to distract myself, I couldn't help but keep glancing over at her. She was engrossed in her phone, tapping away at something, but every now and then, I'd catch her looking up, her gaze lingering on me just a little too long. It wasn't the kind of look you give a random person. It felt different, like she was thinking about something, about me maybe. I couldn't ignore it anymore. My thoughts were a jumbled mess. Why was she even paying attention to me? Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she just had nothing better to do, right? Maybe I was overthinking things, reading too much into something innocent, but it didn't feel innocent. It felt heavy, and that was the problem. I tried to push those thoughts away, tried to stay focused on the simple reality. She was a successful businesswoman, and I was just some kid who barely scraped by. What did I think was going to happen here? That she would take an interest in me? That somehow we were on the same level? The idea felt ridiculous, but the way she kept looking at me made it hard to let go of. Then, she did something that made my heart skip a beat. As she was leaving, she glanced back at me. Just a quick look, but this time, her eyes held something deeper. Not just curiosity, but something more personal, like there was something she wanted to say but couldn't. I froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. Should I say something? Should I act like I hadn't noticed? But before I could even make up my mind, she was gone, disappearing into the busy street outside. I sat there for a long time, staring at my coffee, not really seeing it anymore. What was happening here? Why couldn't I shake this feeling? She wasn't just some woman passing through my life. No, this felt different, like I was getting pulled into something I wasn't prepared for, something that was probably too big for me to handle, and that's when I realized it. There was more to her than I'd thought. She wasn't just the CEO of some big company. No, I was starting to see the cracks in the facade she was wearing. She had a story, just like everyone else, and I couldn't stop wondering if I was somehow a part of it. The confusion was eating at me. Why did it feel like she was struggling with something? Like there was something beneath the surface she wasn't telling anyone. It wasn't just her kindness, the way she listened to me. It was in the way she carried herself, like she was holding back a storm. I wasn't the type to pry, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was hiding something. And maybe, just maybe, I was meant to see it. The rain came suddenly, quiet at first, then heavy. The whole world seemed to slow down. It started with a soft patter against the window, a delicate tap that almost seemed soothing. But soon enough, the rain grew louder, the kind that forces everyone inside to pause and listen. The power flickered once, twice, before it finally gave in. The soft hum of the cafe's lights and the distant chatter of customers vanished, replaced by the eerie stillness of the storm. It was as though the world outside had disappeared, leaving just the two of us in this suspended moment. For a while, neither of us said anything. We sat there in the half-light, the only sound the rhythmic beating of rain on the glass. I glanced at her from across the table, and for the first time, the atmosphere felt charged. It wasn't the storm itself, it was something else. Something that had been building between us, unspoken, but undeniably there. I hadn't noticed it before. The way she sat, so still, so composed, as though the storm outside was nothing more than an inconvenience. But now, I could see the slight tremor in her fingers as she wrapped them around her cup, as if she were trying to hold herself together. There was something fragile about her now, something that hadn't been there before. She wasn't just the confident CEO anymore. No, I was starting to see the cracks, the parts of her she kept hidden from the world. I tried to focus on my coffee, pretending that the tension in the air wasn't making my pulse race. But every time I glanced up at her, I found myself caught in her gaze, as if she were waiting for me to say something, something that would break the silence. But what could I say? What was there to say? She was a stranger, a beautiful, broken stranger who somehow made me feel like I was part of her world. Then, it happened. We both reached for the last napkin at the same time. Our fingers brushed, just barely, but it was enough. Enough to make both of us freeze, our eyes locking for a split second. The moment stretched out, the silence between us thick with something I couldn't explain. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly pulled my hand back, pretending like it was no big deal. But I saw the way her breath caught, the way her eyes widened just a little. She hadn't expected that either. For a moment, I thought she was going to say something. Maybe apologize, maybe laugh it off, but she didn't. She just stared at the napkin in her hand, her face unreadable. And that made everything worse. That made the tension feel heavier, more real. I could feel the weight of the air between us, pushing me to say something, anything. But all I could think was, this is crazy. She's a CEO. I'm just a kid. What the hell am I doing here? I shook my head, trying to push the thoughts aside, trying to convince myself that this was just some weird storm-induced moment. I was probably overthinking it. I mean, how could someone like her, someone so put together, so above everything, ever feel anything for someone like me? But still, I couldn't help the way my mind raced. There was something about her presence, something magnetic that drew me in every time she was near. The storm outside seemed to echo the turmoil inside me, each raindrop a reminder that the boundary between us was blurring, that this wasn't just a casual encounter. Something was shifting, and I couldn't figure out how to stop it. I watched her, trying not to let the feelings show. She was still quiet, but there was a tension in the way she sat now, her shoulders a little stiff, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. It was subtle, but I noticed. I couldn't help but wonder what was going on in her head. What was she thinking? What was she feeling? The rain outside picked up, louder now, like it was pushing against the glass, trying to force its way inside. The cafe was nearly empty now. Most of the patrons had already left, eager to avoid the storm. But we stayed, both of us stuck in this moment, unwilling or perhaps unable to leave. The lights flickered again, and the room seemed to grow darker. I shifted in my seat, uncomfortable, but not in the way I'd expected. It wasn't the cold, the storm, or the dim lighting. It was the air between us, thick with unspoken words. I had the urge to say something, to break the silence. But what could I say? The last time we spoke, it was light, casual. But now, everything had changed. She shifted in her seat, her eyes meeting mine again. This time, there was something different in her gaze, something more vulnerable. I didn't know what it was, but I felt it. The same pull that had been building between us, stronger now. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible over the sound of the storm. I froze, not expecting the question. I wasn't sure how to answer. Am I okay? I didn't know anymore. I wasn't sure if I was just seeing things, but I felt like there was something between us, something that wasn't just a fleeting moment, something more, something deeper. But I couldn't let myself get caught up in it. I couldn't. "Yeah," I said, my voice betraying me. Just the rain." She smiled softly, but I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes. She didn't buy it, but instead of pushing me for more, she simply nodded, as if she understood. Or maybe she didn't, but she didn't want to press. The storm raged outside, but inside the cafe it was strangely still, like everything had paused, waiting for something to happen. And in that silence, we both seemed to be waiting for the same thing, something we weren't ready to face. I didn't know how to explain it, but in that moment I realized I wasn't just drawn to her. There was something she was hiding, something she wasn't telling me. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the only one keeping secrets. I started pulling away. It wasn't intentional, but it was inevitable. I kept telling myself that I needed to keep my distance, that this was all just a fleeting moment, nothing more than a random connection. But the more I tried to ignore her, the more my mind found ways to pull me back. Every time I looked away, every time I pretended to focus on my phone, I felt the weight of her presence behind me, pressing me down. It wasn't like I didn't want to be around her. Hell, I wanted to be around her more than I could admit. But something about this, it felt wrong. The gap between us was too wide, too impossible to cross. She had her life, her career, everything figured out. I had nothing. I didn't belong in her world. And yet, every time our eyes met, I felt like I was being drawn in, like I couldn't stop myself from getting closer. So I started making excuses. I'd leave early, take my time with anything that didn't involve her. I pretended I had more important things to do, checking my phone endlessly, responding to messages that weren't even there. Anything to avoid the moment, anything to avoid the truth that kept rising up uninvited every time I was near her. But no matter how much I tried to distract myself, I could feel her watching me. I could feel the shift in the air, the unspoken questions that lingered between us, and I knew she could feel it too. Then one day she caught me. We were sitting in the same cafe again, the rain outside now a distant memory, the atmosphere between us heavier than ever. I was scrolling through my phone, trying to avoid her gaze when I felt it, her eyes on me, watching me with a quiet intensity. I glanced up for just a second, and that was all it took for her to speak. "You've been quiet lately. Did I do something wrong?" she asked, her voice softer than usual, almost vulnerable. I froze. There it was, the question I had been trying so hard to avoid. My heart pounded in my chest, and for a moment, I couldn't think of anything to say. I couldn't hide behind my phone, couldn't pretend like I wasn't affected by her. She saw right through me. "No," I mumbled, trying to brush it off. "It's just been a lot on my mind." But she didn't buy it. She leaned in slightly, her gaze unwavering. "You know you can talk to me, right? If something's bothering you?" Her words made my stomach twist. She wasn't just being kind. She was looking at me like she saw through the walls I'd been building around myself, and in that moment I couldn't keep pretending anymore. The tension between us was becoming unbearable, and I could feel myself breaking under the weight of it. "I'm fine," I said, my voice barely audible. "Really, just tired, I guess." But she didn't respond immediately. Instead, she just stared at me, her eyes searching, like she was waiting for me to crack. And for a second, I thought I might. But instead, I turned away, breaking the eye contact, retreating into myself. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, and I could barely breathe. This wasn't just a casual interaction anymore. This was something else. Something I couldn't define, but couldn't ignore. The next few days passed in a blur, but I couldn't escape the growing ache that followed me wherever I went. Every time I saw her, every time our eyes met, the weight of her presence settled deeper into my chest. I tried to act normal, tried to tell myself that it was just a phase, but it wasn't. This wasn't just a passing feeling, this was real, and it was tearing me apart from the inside. It all came to a head one night, long after the cafe had emptied, and the storm had long since passed. It was late, and I was still there, staring out the window, lost in my thoughts. The place was quiet now, just the soft hum of the neon lights and the distant rumble of the storm fading in the distance. And then, she was there. She appeared beside me, silently, like she had been waiting for the right moment to speak. "You've been avoiding me," she said, her voice low and hesitant. I didn't look at her, couldn't bring myself to. I knew what she was getting at. "I haven't been avoiding you, just been busy." But even I could hear the lie in my voice. She knew it too. "Stop pretending," she whispered, her words heavy with emotion. "I know you're running from something. From me." I felt a lump form in my throat. There was no point in pretending anymore. I couldn't keep denying what had been building between us. The truth was staring me right in the face. I turned to her, finally meeting her gaze, and for the first time I saw it. Vulnerability. The kind of vulnerability that mirrored my own, the kind that you only let show when you feel safe enough to. "I think about you more than I should," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know this isn't right, but I can't help it." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She knew it wasn't right. She knew this wasn't something we could act on, that there were too many boundaries we couldn't cross, but still, she was feeling the same pull I was, and somehow that made it worse. I couldn't speak at first. My mind was a whirlpool of emotions, confusion, fear, desire, guilt, all tangled up together. Was this real, or was I just imagining it? Had I read too much into everything we'd shared? My heart raced, and I wanted to say something, anything. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just sat there, silently, watching her. Finally, she spoke again, her voice trembling ever so slightly. Is this real? Or am I just imagining it? It was a question that struck deep inside me. Was it real? Was this all just a fantasy, a fleeting moment? Or was there something between us that we couldn't deny? I opened my mouth, but no words came. The weight of everything we hadn't said hung in the air between us, heavier than any storm. Her gaze held mine, a mixture of longing and uncertainty. She was waiting for me to answer, to say something that would make this make sense. But I couldn't. I didn't have the answer. And that's when it hit me. The hardest truth of all. There was no easy way out of this. No clean answer. Only the chaos of emotions that neither of us could control. For a moment, we just sat there, staring at each other in the silence. The storm outside long forgotten, replaced by the tension that now filled the room. The world outside had faded away, leaving only the two of us, lost in this tangled mess of emotions that neither of us knew how to navigate. And as the night stretched on, we both realized something. This wasn't going to be simple. It wasn't going to be easy. But for the first time, we both admitted what had been building between us, and that, in itself, was a beginning. I had to leave. It wasn't the right time, and I knew I couldn't stay. The tension between us was too much now, the air thick with unspoken words and impossible possibilities. Every part of me wanted to stay, wanted to hold on to whatever this was, but I knew, deep down, I was making things worse. I was only feeding the fire that would eventually consume us both. It wasn't just the guilt that ate at me. It wasn't even the fear of what others would think if they found out. No, it was the knowledge that this connection, as real as it felt, was a line that should never have been crossed. She had her life, and I had mine. We were two separate worlds colliding in a storm we couldn't control. I couldn't stay there with her, trapped in the silence, pretending everything was fine when I knew we were both teetering on the edge of something dangerous, something we couldn't undo. So I did it. I said goodbye. It wasn't dramatic, wasn't some grand gesture. I didn't want to make it harder than it already was. I just smiled softly, my gaze lingering on hers for a moment longer than it should have. "Goodbye," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. I stood up, turning away from the table, from her, and walked out without looking back. The storm outside had passed, but the weight in my chest felt like 1,000 clouds pressing down on me. I didn't know if I was making the right choice, but I knew I had to walk away. It was the only way I could free us both from the mess we'd created. But even as I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was leaving something important behind. Something that, for a brief moment, felt like it could have been everything. I thought it was over, but I was wrong. Days passed, each one feeling heavier than the last. I tried to go about my life, to pretend like everything was normal, but I kept thinking about her. I kept thinking about the way her eyes had looked at me that night, the softness in her voice, the way she hadn't wanted to let go. And then, just when I thought I was starting to move on, my phone buzzed. Her name appeared on the screen, the message waiting for me, as if she had been thinking about me too. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the screen. I didn't want to read it. I didn't want to fall back into the chaos. But I opened it anyway. It was a simple message. No long explanations, no dramatic confessions. Just a few words that hit me harder than anything else had. You weren't alone in feeling this. That was it. No promises, no suggestions of a future together. Just that one line, a quiet acknowledgement of everything that had passed between us. And in that moment, I realized something. She wasn't just reaching out because she missed me. She wasn't trying to pull me back into the storm we'd created. She was doing what I had done, acknowledging that what had happened was real, that we had shared something deeper than either of us could deny. She was giving me the closure I hadn't known I needed. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity, feeling the weight of her words sink into me. She hadn't asked for anything. She hadn't expected anything in return. But I knew what it meant. She understood. She felt it too. The pull, the confusion, the guilt. We weren't alone in this. We had both been a part of something that shouldn't have happened, but neither of us could pretend it hadn't. I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to. Part of me wanted to say something, to reach out and tell her that I wasn't okay either, that I had been thinking about her every second, but I didn't. Instead, I put the phone down, staring at the screen for a few moments before locking it. It wasn't about promises anymore. It wasn't about a future that we couldn't have. It was just a moment. A moment that would live between us, unspoken, but understood. No more words needed. I put it out of my mind, but it stayed with me, and I knew this wouldn't be the last time our paths crossed. Some connections aren't meant to be, but they're unforgettable. I spent a long time thinking about it, about what had happened between us, about what it meant. I could tell myself that it was nothing more than a fleeting moment, that it wasn't real, that I should have ignored it, let it slip away like the storm outside. But I couldn't. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in me and in her. We were both caught in a place between desire and morality, between what was right and what we both felt we couldn't resist. I kept wondering, was I wrong for feeling what I felt? Was it wrong to be drawn to someone, even when you knew that there were too many barriers in the way? Too many consequences to consider? Or was it just human? Was it just part of who we are? This need to connect, to feel seen, even in the most complicated, forbidden ways? I guess that's the thing about emotions. They don't always make sense. They don't follow rules, don't wait for the right time or place. They hit you when you least expect it, when you're vulnerable, when the world around you seems to stop and all you can focus on is the other person. But it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it's simple. Feelings like that leave scars, even if they never come to fruition. They make you question yourself, question your choices. And in the end, the only thing that remains is the memory of what could have been, the unanswered questions that linger in the back of your mind. Was it worth it? The answer isn't clear. There's no clean resolution, no easy path forward. Some people meet at the wrong time, and there's nothing they can do to change it. The timing is never right, but that doesn't mean the feelings weren't real. And that's the hardest part. The feeling that what you shared, even if it was only for a moment, was true, and yet impossible to keep. Maybe we were both wrong, or maybe we were just human. Maybe it was the timing that was off. Maybe we both needed to walk away for the right reasons, even if it hurt. Maybe this moment, this thing between us, wasn't meant to last. But I'll never forget it. I don't think I ever could. Some connections aren't meant to be, but they change you. And maybe that's all that matters. Was I wrong for what I felt? Or was it just a fleeting moment that slipped through our fingers because it wasn't meant to last? I can't answer that. Maybe you can. If you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Alex Stories and share your thoughts in the comments. Was the teen wrong for his feelings, or was it just a fleeting moment? Let's talk about it. I'd love to hear what you think.